today I've just got a few little tips to help you with sewing your cashmere if you've not got the hang of it yet. Now, cashmere garments is obviously knitted, so it obviously has a lot of stretch. This is a sleeve, so more stretch widthways than lengthways, but a lot of stretch. It's also a natural fabric, very natural fabric, cashmere. Now, the thing about natural fabrics is that they don't blunt your scissors or your needles. They go on for a very, very long time sewing with natural fabrics, which is not the case with synthetics. Now, you should use a ballpoint needle or a needle for stretch fabrics, which are readily available, and that is what any book will tell you to use. But in my experience, a new ordinary needle doesn't have a problem. I would use a 12 or a 14, and that's not crucial. If it was a very, very fine cashmere, you might go down to a 10, and if it was very, very chunky, you might go up to a 16. But a 12 or 14 needle will suit most cashmeres. So if you've got your needle right, the other thing is your thread. Now, the thread is quite important. Some of the cheaper threads, whether you're sewing cashmere or anything else, if you're continually doing a long stretch of sewing, you'll get a fray here in the needle, and then you get the thread bunching up and you'll get a ball of thread there, and you'll suddenly think your cashmere is bunching up, it doesn't look nice and flat, and then you look and you see you've got a bunch of thread above your needle and the thread has frayed. It's like as though the outside of the thread slides up the core and bunches up. So a decent quality thread is important. Now, you do not have to use a specialised thread. You can use a synthetic thread, and I'm going to quote the Gutermann threads or the Moon threads. There are others as well that are okay, but the very cheap ones avoid, because they'll do what I've just said and you won't end up with a successful project. So it is important, and if it's a thread that you're not used to, just watch as you're going along that it is behaving correctly. The most common mistakes are to do with tensions. It's really difficult to be specific because all machines are different. The modern machines will have a setting for stretch fabrics, possibly for knitted fabrics, and they will tell you what you need to know, the stitches, the lengths and everything, and it may well be preset, in which case you can just go along. But if you've got an older machine or a simpler model, then you have to work it out for yourself. And basically what needs to happen is you need to reduce your tension and you need to reduce your pressure foot pressure. So the pressure foot pressure, if you can imagine, this is your pressure foot. The tightness of the pressure foot on the fabric is going to affect how you sew and how you go around corners. And if it's too severe, then it puckers up or it doesn't lie flat. So you need to reduce that tension. Now, on this machine, which is a Bernina, there is not a setting for that, but there is a setting for your tension. So you can reduce your tension. Quite a lot of machines have a screw up here that reduces your pressure foot pressure, or some have a dial in there, but they are all different. You've just got to be aware of that, because that's where your problems will be. You will need a stitch with some stretch in it, and I'll go back to threads a minute. A cotton thread, although it might sew beautifully, so it depends what you're doing, it will not have a stretch in it itself. The Gutermanns and the Moons and the polyester, not 100% polyester, you've got to be really careful, not the cheaper ones, they will have a stretch in them. So you will have a stretch. You're going to usually be using a zigzag or a stitch that's specifically for a stretch fabric. Now this one, I'll go back to the ones that I've done. This is for if you're doing a straight seam, so you're just joining two pieces together, but you want a stretch in it, but you just want it to look like an ordinary seam. So I have got a straight stitch on the machine with half a zigzag on it, or a zigzag stitch with just reduced to half a zigzag. It depends on how you alter your machine. You can just see there's a zigzag, but not a lot. So then I would give it a press on that side, and a press on that side, and then press it open like that. And you've got a seam, a flat seam that stretches and it lies nice and flat. So that's an important thing for any length of straight stitching, half a zigzag. This stitch is an ordinary zigzag stitch, which is perfect for doing hems, as on there. You needn't try to get that stitch right on the edge of there, is what I'm saying. Do it using your edge as a guide, and then trim it back afterwards. That's if you're doing some sort of a hem. So then it looks neat, but you've just sewn it from that side. This one is a lot of stretch to it, can be used as a decorative stitch. It can be used to sew on the elbow patches, it could be used to sew on any sort of patch, or it could be used as a hemming stitch. And I've got a reduced tension on this machine and it's working okay. And this is quite a simple Bernina model. It's got a few decorative stitches, but not a lot. So you will be able to do it, and you can do it on really old machines as well if you've got the stitch. And then this one is slightly different. I don't know whether you can see this. It's got a zigzag, but across the top of one side of the zigzag is a running stitch. And that's quite good for sewing elbow patches on, or any sort of patches. And you can actually make the zigzag go further in. And I've trimmed it right back to the stitching. Makes a neat hemming stitch. You could use that on your tank tops, round here, round here. You could use it if you wanted to shorten anything and make a hem there. Now you can see that this hasn't been pressed and there's a slight waviness about it. Once you press that with a little bit of steam, 2 dots on your iron, it will all lie beautifully flat, and then anywhere that needs it can be trimmed from the back. Now there's another technique for sewing with cashmere, which I think I may have to do another little video on, and that's using a twin needle, because that's very effective as well. If you are doing a hem, I would recommend pressing it first, and if you're not really confident, do a row of tacking stitches. So you've pressed your hem back, tacked it, you're going to sew using your pressure foot or a mark on your machine as a guide. You're not trying particularly to hit the edge of this underneath turn back, because it's easier to trim it afterwards. You've done it there, you're not on the edge of that, but it doesn't matter because simply trim it back afterwards, and that makes it neater than trying to sew it either from that side or to sew it on the edge from the outside. It just makes it neater to sew it and press it and then trim it back, and it's not going to go anywhere, and when it's pressed the stitch is bed in and it's neat. So I hope that helps when you're sewing cashmere.